Welcome to the Laverne Church of the Brethren's weekly audio message. Here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren, we create a Christian community called by Christ to be inclusive, caring, and peace-minded. We affirm that people of any race, ethnic identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age, economic status, faith tradition, or life situation are welcome in our congregation. We believe in compassionate service, stewardship of creation, respect for diversity, and nonviolent reconciliation for differences among all people, nations, and faith traditions. We claim no creed but the New Testament as exemplified by the life of Christ. We strive to follow the way of Jesus. And through these efforts, we seek to grow ever closer to the mind and heart of God. And now let us ground ourselves as we enter into today's message.
It is a real joy to welcome Erin Duffy as our preacher this morning. Erin is a member of this congregation. She's incredibly gifted and incredibly generous and insightful. I learned so much from her Race and Place class last spring. I know that she's on the Pastoral Search Committee. She has such a strong commitment to this church and also to nudging us out into the larger community. So by profession, Erin is a research scientist at the University of Southern California. She studies issues related to health policy and economics and evaluates and helps to develop health policy options that can actually make life better for people. She says that she is a data nerd. I say that she is brilliant. Erin also keeps busy raising 3 beautiful children, Betsy, Charlie, and Jack, with her husband Keith. She's fun and kind and just good. And so, Erin, thank you for stepping into this new role as a preacher, and we look forward to your message.
Last month, as some members of our congregation embarked on the Civil Rights Tour in Selma, and our choir headed to Ireland to perform, I joined my mom and sister for a week of vacation in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. It was totally coincidental that I went there at the same time as the choir, although I did cross paths with them on the flight home. My vacation included coastal views, fancy teas and castles, lots of leisure time, and there was also an unexpected aspect of my trip that was deeply intellectual and theological. Within 24 hours of arriving in Ireland, I found myself in front of this mural of American activists and leaders in Belfast. That's Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. I had flown 4,000 miles past Selma, and somehow I seemed to be on the Civil Rights Tour. Murals like this one reflect a deep connection between Northern Ireland and America that was previously unknown to me. On my vacation, I learned that Northern Ireland had a nonviolent civil rights movement in the late 1960s and early 70s that was modeled after the American civil rights movement. It closely followed Reverend King's strategy. There were marches where they sang the song, "We Shall Overcome." Irish culture has no shortage of its own inspirational music, yet they chose to sing American gospel music at their marches. The work of Black Americans was their guiding light. I grew up as an Irish American Catholic in the Archdiocese of Boston, and there was broad awareness of the troubles in Northern Ireland and the peace efforts Bill Clinton engaged in as our sitting president. My basic understanding was that there was a violent conflict there from the late 1960s to 90s between a predominantly Catholic Republican faction that wanted Northern Ireland to separate from the United Kingdom, and a predominantly Protestant loyalist faction that wanted Northern Ireland to remain a part of the United Kingdom. Where I grew up, there was widespread support for Northern Ireland to separate from the United Kingdom. This mural was across the street from my office in South Boston, at my first job out of college at Catholic Charities. It states, "Ireland unfree will never be at peace," with imagery that calls for the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from Northern Ireland. And at just about any bar in Boston, you could be served a cocktail called an Irish Fireball. The non-violent movement for civil rights that existed before the violence of the Troubles had never been a part of the stories I'd heard or history I'd been taught. During my vacation, especially in Belfast and Derry, Londonderry, I did a deep dive on the civil rights movement and its role in the Troubles. I'll share an abbreviated version of that history with you now. And apologies to the choir. You probably already learned all this while on tour, and we'll just get everyone else caught up. The Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association, NICRA, formed in 1967, comprising a broad coalition of trade unionists, radical socialists, Republicans, and members of the Northern Irish Labour and Liberal parties. There were other civil rights organizations, including the Socialist People's Democracy Party. This mural in the historically Catholic Republican Bogside neighborhood of Derry, Londonderry, depicts an early civil rights march led by NICRA. And yes, it's odd to have a city with a two-part name in which one name is a subset of the other. Derry, Londonderry. Republicans prefer Derry, Loyalists prefer Londonderry, and the two-part combined name serves as a compromise. In the early civil rights movement, a prominent protest slogan was "One man, one vote." You see, there was a system of voting in Northern Ireland that had long been retired in other parts of the United Kingdom, called plural voting. You could only vote if you were a homeowner, and business owners got multiple votes. Few Catholics owned homes or businesses, a result of centuries of discriminatory policies. There was also gerrymandering. So although Catholic Republicans outnumbered Protestant Loyalists in Derry, Londonderry, the Loyalists held political control. With that political control, the Loyalists were drastically overrepresented in the public housing allocations and in civil service jobs, including the police. Civil rights activists wanted voting reform, fair housing and jobs, and also opposed the Special Powers Act and wanted to eliminate an entirely Protestant paramilitary wing of the police force, known as B Specials. These civil rights activists in Northern Ireland looked across the Atlantic at the success of Reverend King's nonviolent civil rights movement, including major legislation like the Voting Rights Act. They copied the nonviolent strategies and organization of Black Americans. They started with marches in 1968, singing "We Shall Overcome." There were several marches at which police responded violently to nonviolent protesters. It was filmed by news media, and the footage was a rallying cry for marches across Northern Ireland. One of the largest marches was in Derry, Londonderry, and had 15,000 participants in November 1968. Within days after that march, voting reform was achieved with the Electoral Law Act. Then on New Year's Day, 1969, the People's Democracy Party began a march from Belfast to Derry, Londonderry that took several days and was modeled directly on Reverend King's Selma to Montgomery march that had taken place in 1965. The Prime Minister had called for a temporary end to protests, and this march had proceeded in defiance. Similar to the American Civil Rights Movement, the marchers strategically went through some rural loyalist communities in nonviolent provocation. They were attacked along the way at Bertollet Bridge on January 4th by loyalists, many of them identified as off-duty police, B Specials. Those who attacked the marchers were not prosecuted. This event sparked more protests and rioting in Derry, Londonderry the following day, and tensions continued to escalate across Northern Ireland into the spring and summer. On August 12th, civil rights and loyalist protesters clashed in Derry, Londonderry. The The following day, NICRA called for protests across Northern Ireland in support of the Bogside, with the strategy to draw police away from the fighting there. And NICRA issued this statement: "A war of genocide is about to flare across the North. The Civil Rights Association demands that all Irishmen recognize their common interdependence and calls upon the government and people of the 26 counties to act now to prevent a great national disaster. We urgently request that the government take immediate action to have the United Nations peacekeeping force sent to Derry." There were protests across Northern Ireland, and many turned violent. A month-long siege took place on the blockaded Bogside neighborhood, declared by residents to be free Derry. In Belfast, hundreds of Catholic families' homes were burned by a large loyalist mob. Republican and loyalist paramilitary groups were violent. While NICRA continued its work, the public support for a nonviolent movement was waning, and the Provisional Irish Republican Army, the IRA, was gaining prominence in the civil rights movement. Tensions escalated further when the British military was deployed to Northern Ireland, rather than a United Nations peacekeeping force, and they instituted a controversial policy of internment without trial. Hundreds of suspected IRA members were imprisoned without due process. And a cab driver in Belfast shared with me that the mass internment of men really changed the ways families and society functioned during this time. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? NICRA continued to lead marches in the subsequent years, particularly against these internment policies, and paramilitary activity also escalated. On January 30th, 1972, a civil rights march to protest British internment policy was met with violent military response. 13 protesters were killed and 17 wounded in a tragedy known as Bloody Sunday. This was the end of NICRA's work. There was no longer popular support for a nonviolent civil rights movement. In the following 3 decades, over 3,500 people died and tens of thousands were injured. Nearly 2,000 people were imprisoned, and about 7,000 people were forced out or fled their homes. Walls were erected to separate neighborhoods, most prominently in Belfast. They're called peace walls. The Troubles officially came to an end in 1998 with the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. 25 years later, as a tourist, I observed that there's still mistrust and segregation in Belfast and Derry, Londonderry. The peace walls still haven't come down, and there are still neighborhoods that close their walls at night, close their gates at night. And the people of Northern Ireland haven't stopped watching the American civil rights movement. In the Bogside neighborhood of Derry, Londonderry, I found the words, "I can't breathe. An injustice to one is an injustice to all." It was freshly spray painted in a parking lot on a shop wall. Members of our congregation returning from the Civil Rights Tour in Selma have emphasized that the march continues. And I've come to recognize that as we march, the world is watching how we do it. Time magazine has captured these George Floyd murals beyond Minneapolis, Minnesota. In Berlin, Germany, Bethlehem, Palestine, Nairobi, Kenya, and Binish, Syria. The struggle for justice led by Black Americans continues to resonate around the world. This work is a global model. It is an American export. Since learning about the civil rights movement in Northern Ireland, I've wondered, what if leaders in law enforcement had had a more compassionate response to nonviolent protesters? What could have gone differently there? And why didn't I already know this civil rights movement history of Ireland? Why isn't it a part of the dominant narrative? And who is served when this history goes untold while the violent part is centered? We are a peace church. We do not condone violence, and it is a lot to ask an oppressed people with no political power, seeking basic economic security, to be nonviolent as violence is perpetrated against them. In 1968, shortly before his assassination, Reverend King wrote an article titled "Showdown for Nonviolence" about the escalation of racial rioting in America. He wrote, "I'm committed to nonviolence, absolutely. But I'm frank enough to admit that if our nonviolent campaign doesn't generate some progress, people are just going to engage in more violent activity, and the discussion of guerrilla warfare will be more extensive." As a peace church, if we want nonviolence to work, we have to make it effective. We have to be bold, strategic, and use nonviolent leverage points to get leaders to enact changes, often against their best interests. And we may find more success if we act early on, when we first hear the calls for justice. Peace requires justice. I find this theology echoing over time and space. Our first reading this morning came from 700 BC Jerusalem, as Isaiah's prophecy about a future holy city declared that righteousness and justice would pave the way to peace. This theology resounds in the words of Erin: "There can be no justice without peace, and there can be no peace without justice." In this speech, King was speaking out on behalf of men imprisoned in California for evading the draft and protesting the Vietnam War. This message also reverberates in Pope Paul VI's January 1972 World Day of Peace message. This message came just weeks before Bloody Sunday, and we heard an excerpt of it as our second reading today. It acknowledges that peace and justice are not stagnant states, that they require ongoing work. It makes a foundational assertion that a respect for all people underlies justice, and in turn is essential for peace. I can see the deep theological connections flowing from the words of the prophet Isaiah through Reverend King and Pope Paul VI into the contemporary protest chant in the movement for Black Lives: "No justice, no peace." A peace church must be a justice church, proactively employing nonviolent strategy. And I see so many of you living out this theology. Just this month, we've heard messages about ongoing work addressing racism and gun violence. Let us continue to be bold and unapologetic as we work for justice, because this is the work of peacemaking. I'm grateful to be uplifted by the strength of this congregation. Thanks be to God.
We're so glad that you listened to the message today. If you're looking for an open and affirming, peace-loving, and justice-seeking congregation, consider visiting us for in-person worship on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. We'd love to meet you.